In particular, I want to point out something to people who don't like feminists and don't like talking about rape culture and think all of this is a conspiracy. You're hurting men and boys who are victims of sexual assault and abuse when you dismiss rape culture. You are making it harder for victims of that kind of abuse to come forward because you are helping to perpetuate rape culture by objecting to criticism of it. I don't want to have to talk about rape culture, but I'd rather not have to talk about rape culture because we're solving the problems of rape culture than because it's a difficult topic and I get a lot of shit every time I mention it. I think it's worth having these discussions. I think it's worth standing my ground on this topic and worth defending the concept. Again, if you've got a better phrase, I'm willing to listen. Throw out your ideas and explain how they're better. But until you have a better word or phrase, stop trying to discount the name of it, please, and try to deal with the problem it's describing. Hey everyone, Christy here. It's Sunday. I am reflecting on the week, having some coffee, and I think it's time to make a video again talking about rape culture. In particular, I want to talk about why it's important to label rape culture as rape culture. So not exactly the most pleasant conversation to start a Sunday, but I think one that's vitally important for the quality of people's lives around the world. So here we go, a conversation from my feminist perspective on rape culture. I'm just going to bring up the objection that I hear every time I mention rape culture, and that is that people don't like the word rape culture. I'm going to deal with this very quickly because I don't think it's worth spending a lot of time on because there are only two possibilities, two possible answers I see for this problem, if you want to call it that. One, get over it and just use the term. I mean, that's the term everybody knows. Complaining about the phrase rape culture is really just a way to not actually talk about rape culture, right? That is often used to sort of change the conversation away from the problems that allow sexual predators to continue preying on people, and more about, I don't like how this phrase makes me feel. It is what it is. Get over it. Or, if you can't get over it, if you can't move on, then there is another option open to you that you should take advantage of, and that is to coin your own phrase for this phenomenon and start to use it. There is literally no point in complaining about a phrase for a concept if you can't come up with a better one. I'm open to a better phrase if one has one. I'm open to a better phrase if you can come up with something that captures the problem more comprehensively than rape culture. Great, we could really use that word. What is it? Let us know. And if you don't have an answer, see my previous thing on point 1. Get over it, because it is what it is. Let's start with what rape culture isn't before we move into the topic. Right? Rape culture is not crime statistics. Rape culture is not the rate at which people report crime. Rape culture is not survey data on how people feel about sexual abuse as a crime. Rape culture is the thing that contextualizes all that actual criminal data. It's not the criminal data itself. It's the the institutions where sexual abuse takes place and how they are processed. That's a really good, I think, way to introduce yourself to the idea of rape culture if it's not a concept that you're familiar with or it's one that you resisted in the past. I don't think it's a controversial statement to say that the Catholic Church is a rape culture because within it they have a culture of protecting sexual predators for decades, for silencing victims, and for ignoring the problem, thereby making it more likely that people will be abused. And that culture exists up until this day. Right now it's going on all around us, right? The Catholic Church has not stopped being a rape culture. We've only just started talking about in the last decade how much rape has gone on because of its rape culture inside of it. Another example of rape culture in institutions We can look at the Jerry Sandusky case with sexual abuse. There was the case that I covered in my series here on my channel about teenage boys at a Texas high school where putting things in people's rectum was part of the hazing ritual. That's sexual abuse. That's without consent, that is rape, introducing an object into somebody's body without their consent. We're now also hearing about another ongoing sexual abuse scandal happening in Ohio involving a Republican who was an assistant athletic coach on the team where this abuse took place over years. So the thing about rape culture is that it is the culture around which these sexual abuses take place, and when they enable them and help perpetuate them as opposed to confront and stop and prevent them. In particular, I want to point out something to people who don't like feminists and don't like talking about rape culture and think all of this is a conspiracy. You're hurting men and boys who are victims of sexual assault and abuse when you dismiss rape culture. You are making it harder for victims of that kind of abuse to come forward because you are helping to perpetuate rape culture by objecting to criticism of it. It perpetuates the victimization of everyone. So let me give you an example, right? This is why it's important to talk about rape culture. I'm going to use the example of the Catholic Church, but I could also use the example of university athletics departments around the United States. We've seen a lot of sexual abuse cases from men and women coming forward, but let's look at the Catholic Church as a rape culture. This week, in the last 5 days, the AP, the Associated Press, has done a story exposing sexual abuse of nuns by priests in the Catholic Church. And they've found cases in continents around the globe. If I can just consult my notes for a second. Cases emerged in Europe, South America, and Asia, quote, demonstrating the problem is global and pervasive. But people are coming forward now, nuns are coming forward now, and apparently a nun in India filed a police complaint against a bishop alleging rape, which would have been unthinkable even a few years ago. Now, this should not be any surprise to anyone, right? And I bet it's not. I bet you're not at all surprised to find out that the Catholic Church has a problem with priests who abuse nuns, sexually abuse them, and that those nuns don't have a system to come forward, report their cases, be treated fairly, have the case looked over, investigated, have witness testimony taken. None of that. I'm sure you're not surprised that none of that happens in the Catholic Church. You know why? Because the Catholic Church is a rape culture, and it doesn't matter if the victims are boys or girls or women. The problem is the way that power is structured in order to protect sexual predators. And those sexual predators are men. In this case, the men have the very high status in the Catholic institutions, right? So it's embarrassing when these men are exposed, when bishops are exposed as sexual predators. So what does the Catholic Church try to do to protect its reputation? It will do what any athletic department does, or university that has a problem with sexual assault on campus. It's a cover your ass policy, CYA. It's to try to make it go away, to minimize it, push it to the side. That is the instinct of the institutions, the people in the institutions who are tied up. Their dignity, honor, their work is bound up with these institutions, and they want to protect the institutions more than they want to protect victims and prevent future assaults. And that is a rape culture. That is all of the stuff around what is the actual crime. And it sets the stage for whether or not that crime is actually going to be brought forward, whether or not the perpetrator is going to be dealt with. And we're dealing with it right now outside of the criminal justice system. We can talk about rape culture in the criminal justice system, but I want to talk about just in our society, in institutions, whether it's voluntary institutions or religious organizations or government organizations, government departments, or university athletic departments. Whenever you have a situation where sexual assaults may occur and they need a policy to be dealt with, how to deal with that in your institution, a lot of times people will go to protect the institution first. When we break this down into only individual level stuff, like 2 individuals that are happening here, right? Then any individual priest and his victim, whether that's a nun or a child, right? If you don't see the whole Catholic Church framework, it looks just like a single one-off incident, right? But when you have these one-off incidents over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, and the Catholic Church has the same policy to deal with the problem, which is to let perpetrators continue to find victims, that is a rape culture, and we need to call it that. We need to call it a rape culture because the Catholic Church has a problem structurally. It's not just bad apples. It's not just bad individual priests or bishops. This is an institutional problem. It's a structural problem. It's a power problem. It's an accountability problem. And if you don't see the culture, you can't see all of the things that are in the background, that are the decisions that lead up to moving that priest to another parish instead of calling the police and turning him in. And that's why we have to make these connections about rape culture. We have to see beyond the individuals. We have to see the power structures and the norms and the cover your ass policies going on, and then figure out how do we get transparency and light and fairness into these processes so that there is more accountability. There are more prosecutions when there are crimes being committed, and that people with power who make decisions to cover up instead of report should be held legally responsible. That's why it's important that we call rape culture rape culture. That's why it's important we use the phrase rape culture when it fits, because we need to be able to distinguish an individual person like Brock Turner, right, from the system of justice that only gave him a 6-month sentence, right? His individual crime, right? His individual crime is his action, but his light sentence, considering the severity of his crime, is part of rape culture in the justice system. So separating these out is important. Understanding the culture and the values of institutions and their practices. I know it's a little bit on the subtle side for some people, but if you want to understand sociology, it's really helpful to understand how people in groups act differently than they would if they were just a free agent existing in the world. Our power structures and institutions, like churches, like universities, like athletic departments, all of these places constrain our behaviors. Institutions have practices and rules and standards, right? And so that is the structure that is responsible for allowing the individual act to happen. I think I'm repeating myself now, so I'm going to wrap this up. I don't want to have to talk about rape culture, but I'd rather not have to talk about rape culture because we're solving the problems of rape culture than because it's a difficult topic and I get a lot of shit every time I mention it. I think it's worth having these discussions. I think it's worth standing my ground on this topic and worth defending the concept. Again, you've got a better phrase. I'm willing to listen. Throw out your ideas and explain how they're better. But until you have a better word or phrase, stop trying to discount the name of it, please, and try to deal with the problem it's describing. That's my advice to people who get freaked out by the concept of rape culture. Alright guys, I am going to go and refresh my coffee. Ever since I watched H. Bomber Guy's video about truth about Paul Joseph Watson and soy, I took on his recommendation to use soy milk in my coffee, not my tea, and I used the vanilla flavored soy milk. Oh, so good. Oh, thank you, H. Bomber Guy. You changed my life. That recommendation literally changed my life because every day now I have soy milk instead of regular milk. And so yes, I would highly recommend you give it a try. So a slightly more positive thing to end this video on. Okay guys, I've been Christy. You've been awesome. Thank you so much for your time and attention. We'll catch ya again really soon. Bye. You hear that noise? there's a guy right under my window with his motorcycle. He's got his balaclava on. He's got his helmet ready to go. He's got his motorcycle running. And then he's just typing on his phone. And he's just letting his motorcycle run, making that awful noise. And I can't record any sound. And I just have to wait. Because my German's not good enough for me to open up das Fenster, the window, and yell at him. So, waiting. Now he's putting on his gloves. Now he's putting on his other glove. Yeah, make sure it's tight on your wrist so it doesn't fall off. Oh my god, he's getting on the bike. Oh, he's getting off the bike. Oh, he's taking off the stand and pulling the bike backwards. Oh, don't hit that car. You don't have enough room. All right, so he's on the bike again. Oh, go. Turn on your headlight. Go on. Go. Ass. And now it's Sunday, so the Christians are ringing their bells. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. I can't get a break.